Hello and welcome to another episode of The Empathetic Atheist. My name is Justin. How are you guys doing tonight? I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with me. Tonight we have our, I think the second guest that has this religious belief coming on the show. And it's going to be the first time that I have my co-host on the show. Before I get started, I'd like to say hi to everybody that's in the chat. Actually, we don't have a lot of people in the chat right now. But now that we're live, we'll start gaining some traction. But we have MurderShed Steve, we have P, we have Oz, and we have Kat the Humanist, and Geo Sam. What's going on, guys? Thank you for hanging out. Thank you, Kat. If you do like my hat, you can go on our website and order an Empathetic Atheist hat. Like I said, I got the shirts out now, too. On the back, it says, "To be fair." So we got all that going for us now. But yeah, thank you guys for coming and hanging out. I do want to bring in my co-host, MurderShed Steve, from the Atheist Roundtable. What's going on, MurderShed?
Well, how's it going, Justin?
It's moving. It's moving right along.
It's good to see you on this side of StreamYard, anyway.
Yeah. Normally I'm sitting on your guys' show bullshitting and flapping my gums.
Yeah, it's about freaking time.
But yeah, thanks for coming on and doing a co-host with me. We were gonna have you as a regular host, and I was like, but he's boring. He's already got his stuff. Like, I've all heard his story. He's really good at co-hosting and asking questions. Let's do that. So,
well, fair enough.
But yeah, thanks for coming on, bro. So our guest tonight is somebody that I met in a chat group, and it was the first conversation I had with him was fun. but yeah, he me and him we've had some good conversations since then. And I asked him to come on last minute as a guest, and he said that he would be happy to. So without further ado, we have Mo L with us tonight. What's going on, Mo?
Thanks for having me. I'm good, man. Seems everything is good. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for doing this last minute. You have a show that you're starting of your own. If you want to, go ahead, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically. First of all, I want to start off by saying, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. So yeah, we have the show, me and Muhammad Yunus, the last Muslim guest you had on.
Uh-huh.
And the show is basically, well, it's still in the making, to be honest with you, but we have a YouTube channel. It's called Philosophical Muslims. Okay, so we basically discuss things from a philosophical lens, and we discuss Islam as well, and we're trying to basically invite people to this worldview, which we believe is in line with reality, which makes it the truth. So we're Muslims at the end of the day, and that's what we're trying to do, invite people to Islam.
Gotcha. So that thing you said at first, you said, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficial. Is that the same as Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Hell
that's what.
Yeah. All right. I've been learning a little bit of Arabic lately, and I learned one of the I think it's the shortest surah in the Quran,
yes.
But it's the surah that basically speaks on 1/3 of the entire Quran.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, it's pretty much that's its equivalency.
Mhm.
It's 1/3 of the entire Quran. So, Surah Al-Ikhlas, which basically
Mhm.
says that God is one, self-sufficient, eternal,
Yeah.
not begotten or can beget,
Lam
and
yulid wa lam yulid. Yep.
yes, lam yalid wa lam yulad, and basically there is nothing like him unto this whole reality. So we cannot
Yep.
even imagine him, since we're only been exposed to this dimension and nothing else.
Yep.
You know,
Walam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad.
that's it. That's what it means, pretty much. What
Sweet.
I got some catching up to do on
I love
Arabic
that.
for sure.
Yeah, I'm
I'm a little
trying to.
behind.
I'm not only learning how to speak it and just remembering what the verse itself sounds like without knowing what the hell it means. I'm also learning how to read and write it also. So I've learned the alphabet. I like the alphabet a lot better than the English alphabet because
Oh, it's
there's
very
families.
flowy.
There's like alif. There's bet, the. There's gin. Ha ha. There's like different families. There's lam, mim nun, and there's like helper letters like Hamza and Lam Alif, and there's different ways to make your vowels. There's like a Fatiha, there's a Dharma, and what's the other one? Serka or something like that.
Kasra, yeah,
Kasra, yeah, Kasra,
Yeah.
to get your A's, E's, and U's and all that stuff. It's
Yes, you-
honestly a lot easier than what I thought it was going to be comparing
You
it
seem
to the
equipped, to
English
be
language.
honest with you. Yeah? You
Huh?
seem pretty.
Yeah.
You seem equipped so far, man. Like you're good to go. You know.
I'm hoping so. I really want to get down to reading the Quran in its original state and its original language,
Yes.
because you guys have spoken about. You said, yeah, man, you can read it in English if you want to, but you're not gonna get the eloquency of the language itself, of
Yeah.
the text itself, out of the Quran without actually reading it in its original language.
Of course, yeah. Even I'm Egyptian, right? So my Egyptian dialect doesn't do it justice.
Okay.
So, yeah. So even like if you look into Egyptian music
Mhm.
or Arab music and poetry and prose and all that, it's not equivalent to the Quran at all. The way the Quran is constructed is just marvelous. You know, it has. It's not. You cannot equate it to anything. You cannot equate it to song, to poetry, to. It's absolute revelation, I would say, because I could, as a Arabic speaking Egyptian, I haven't seen anything like it. You know,
Mhm.
and I've memorized poetry from medieval Arabia before, which were pre-Islamic, so before Muhammad, peace be upon him. I've memorized a bunch of poetry by a poet by the name of Antara. He was Ethiopian and half Ethiopian, half Arab, and he was a slave pretty much. And he used to write poetry, and then he became a soldier. So he has a nice story. If you can look him up, Antara, that's his name, and he's pretty much he was Ethiopian, yeah. So and he used to write poetry, war poems. That's what I liked him, because they don't sound. And he also wrote romantic poems. So he was a lover and a fighter at the same time.
Okay.
So that's why I was attracted to his poetry and I enjoyed it. But it's not like the Quran at all. The Quran is something unique and basically, for example, in a poem, you can have a verse. You know, in prose you can have also verses. If I'm not mistaken, in songs you have verses and all these things. But in the Quran, we don't call them verses. We call them signs.
Yeah, signs.
Yes, signs. So these ayat in Arabic, which are signs, they're supposed to help you reflect. So they're supposed to help you reflect on this dimension that we're in, and the reality and from within and from outside as well.
Mhm.
And so when you reflect, you know, you can basically attain knowledge and come to a realization that the divine exists, you know, because that's the best explanation pretty much. And we can delve into that further, but
Sure.
this is pretty much it, you know.
Cool.
Would that be like a meditation kind of?
Yeah, I mean, not just meditation, but also
Like prayer.
Philosophizing. Yeah, I mean, you don't just
Sure.
need to meditate. You can ponder and reflect on the reality, you know. So without obviously a naturalistic lens, but more of a spiritual lens, because we're spiritual beings at the end of the day, you know. So you want to reflect like that, you know, or else you become robotic if you take off that lens. You look at it and see, okay, how did we come to be? Is it all by chance? Does chance give us justification, or is it was it preordained, or was there a covenant that we made, a divine covenant with the divine, and then we came to this reality, for example, or was it imposed on us and we just happened to be in this physical dimension? So all these questions, you gotta ask and see what's the best answer at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
You're muted.
Yeah, I got a quick question in there.
Okay.
Sometimes accidentally the audio gets murdered up in here, so you gotta do what you gotta do. So you mentioned that we're spiritual beings.
Yes.
Do you mind expanding on that for me? Like what do you define as like a spiritual being or a spirit or something like that?
Okay, so here is something that I basically like to do when I talk with atheists. Okay, so I like to basically ask them about cognition, consciousness, and or metacognition and rationality. Okay, our faculties that we possess that are metaphysical, so beyond the physical, if you want to call them that. Honestly,
like math being an abstract concept that numbers don't exist, but the concept of them does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, numbers do not exist. It's all like abstract thinking. So I like to ask the atheists, okay, how do you basically justify that under naturalism? Because the best way of attaining knowledge is through comparison. Okay, so are we just fundamentally based on subparticles like bosons and fermions, and we're zombie robots, or do we possess something that I would like to call mystical? Okay, that is the soul, the spirit, okay, which is, I would say, part of the conscious, is our consciousness. And basically science would have no foot in the door. This is now a metaphysical discussion, which is in the field of philosophy. You know what I'm saying? So the discipline of philosophy is not science, because science does not deal with subjective states, if you want to call them that. It's only based on the objective. It's a third-person inquiry, not a first-person inquiry like mathematics. Okay, like mathematics would be abstract, so it's first-person. You can calculate in your own head, right? And it's necessary truth, mathematics. So what I would say, basically, we possess something that is mystical, and we cannot explain it any other way but through monotheism. Okay, or theism, if you want to be a bit lenient, but not philosophical naturalism, because I would say philosophical naturalism has not provided us with any answer. And methodological naturalism, which is now the scientific philosophy of science, or the scientific method, it will be pretty much cyclical, because if you notice, like a little bit of the philosophy of science, for example, there are presuppositions. So science is based on philosophical underpinnings, for example, and you cannot examine these philosophical underpinnings using the scientific method.
So basically what you're saying is that we have to presuppose the laws of logic.
We have to presuppose them. They're innate. Okay, they're innate. And this is where innatism comes into play as well. Okay, because innatism, for example, in the Islamic dynasty, the Muslim philosophers, when they took the works of the Greeks, they criticized it, they enhanced it, and fully articulated it in a better way. So a philosopher or a polymath or a theologian by the name of Ibn Taymiyyah, he came up with a concept that is above intellect. Because the Greeks said the highest form of attaining knowledge would be intelligence, or logic and rationality. But the Muslims said, no, there's something above that. And that's innatism, which is innate, something that is innate. So it's what we call the fitra. The fitra is our innate disposition. So our innate disposition can tell us, for example, if we are rational human beings. So we accept it as self-evident or axiomatic. You get what I'm saying? So you accept that basically we are rational human beings based on the fact that you cannot prove it or disprove it. You just accept it or believe in it. You know, because to me, belief and acceptance are synonymous. You get what I mean? So now all these things are intuitive. So what about us? What's so intrinsic about us?
I think
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I think I might have some different understandings, or like for instance, science, right?
Mhm.
Um, I believe now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe
Go
that you
ahead.
said something about there being presuppositions within science,
Yes, yes.
and I don't see it that way
Yeah. So let me.
necessarily. I see the scientific process as basically taking the null hypothesis and then investigating to find what the answer is.
So yeah, they are hidden presuppositions in science. Okay, so
Okay.
the science, the philosophy champions science, for example. You need uh, you need your metaphysics to do science. Okay, it's not the other way around. So, like Immanuel Kant will tell you, your metaphysics has a higher epistemological weight than your science, because no matter what, your sound reasoning will always maintain. It won't change. But under science, you have the problem of induction, so it cannot give you certainty. It will always change, and it will always change based on your own investigation, based on your own uh, metaphysics. However,
Well,
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. My understanding in that is that essentially the reason why the answer that science gives changes,
Yes,
or the solution to different questions changes, is because we find out more about the objective truth of whatever it is we're investigating. So
yeah,
as we come to the best, like the best answer that we have currently is the theory, right? But then as we investigate further and we challenge that theory, we find out more about what's really going on, and then we have a better understanding, so we change the answer. I wouldn't necessarily say that science changes. I would say that the answer changes as we investigate further,
yeah. Well,
if that makes sense.
I would say that science changes, because if the answer changes, then science as well. Well, the science, even I mean, the scientific method. If I'm not mistaken, maybe in academia there's a lot of discussions and whatnot. Even within the philosophy of science, there's a lot of discussions, nonetheless.
Sure.
But your metaphysics don't change; they stay the same. So,
So
for example, let
I,
me give you. Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to add real quick that we're speaking as all of us here have spoken with the scientific method as if it is one thing, and I just want to add the caveat that there are different types of scientific methods out there that we use. So we're not just like digging into just one of them. I think
Okay.
what Moel is saying is that there's different. Well, what I'm saying is that there's different levels of scientific method that deal with certain areas of the world, or what we're dealing with within our reality. So just so for everybody out there that argues for only one scientific method, and that is the say all be all, it is not the case. There's multiple different types. But yeah, I digress. Go ahead, Mo.
No, actually, Justin, do you mind diving into that just a little bit? Because I'm curious about that. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so let me pull up and give you the exact names. Because at one point in time I was arguing for only one type of scientific method, and somebody had showed me this, and I was like, wow, really? Oh, okay. And let me bring it up real quick.
In any case,
Yeah,
there was another question that I had for you. Kind of rewinding the clock way back. Do you think that the spirit or the soul
yeah.
that we were talking about before is responsible for those abstract absolutes like math?
Like, is it? Do you mean like without it, we wouldn't have this metaphysics?
That's actually another good question.
Yeah, I can delve into that.
Okay,
Yeah.
real quick, just to name them off,
Yeah.
and anybody in the chat can look at them. There's three types of scientific methods that we use, and one of them is called descriptive investigation, comparative investigation, and experimental investigation. Most of the time when we speak, we're speaking of experimental investigation, And that's the the scientific method. You have an idea on how something works. You have a hypothesis. You gather evidence for that hypothesis. You send that hypothesis off to a peer review team to where you try and falsify your own idea, and other people try and falsify your idea. If they are not able to, and it is logical and sound, well, I wouldn't say that in a philosophical sense. If it can't be shown, with actual evidence, hardcore, evidence, to be wrong, it graduates to theory, and then it's now a theory. And that's why I get pissed off when people downplay the word theory, it's just a theory.
Yeah.
No, it's a theory.
Yeah.
Like gravity.
It made it all the way up
to fucking
to theory.
Germ disease, or the germ theory.
Yeah.
That's a theory, but we take it within our reality as almost an absolute fact. Now the only thing the only thing I can say I really know for a fact is, we go back to Descartes. I think, therefore I am. I know I exist because I'm having experiences, but anything else that I say I'm absolutely sure about, I'm really not. It's just 99.9%, sure. I could always be wrong.
It's the way that we
solve the problem of hard solipsism.
Yeah, it's the way that we experience reality that really is what we can test and know.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at from what I've gathered, the scientific method is based on induction, empiricism, and observation. Which what Justin just mentioned pretty much. So induction, empiricism, and observation. That alone is this is the method. But now the philosophical underpinnings that the scientific method itself cannot examine are things like, for example, science is immoral. So science cannot distinguish between a true morality and a false morality.
Yep.
And things like mathematics. Math and science are two different paradigms. So a scientific method cannot basically conduct math. They're two different paradigms. And then the last one would be, there's a presupposition now that I was talking to you about, that basically rationality and empiricism are presupposed, and they're considered true or axiomatic in the philosophy of science. But the scientific method cannot prove rationality and empiricism. You understand what I'm saying? So this is something in the scope of metaphysics where basically philosophical naturalism would be the worldview to basically examine it. You know what I'm saying? So if you're an atheist and you adhere to philosophical naturalism, you have to now engage from a philosophical naturalistic lens instead of methodological naturalism.
Yeah, see, that's what I have subscribed to, is methodological naturalism. And now I've had to kind of almost step out of my shoes when speaking with you and Hatem and Jake and some of the other Muslims, in the group. Okay. I find these talks that we're having very interesting.
Yes.
On simply just a philosophical level alone.
Yes.
Very convincing.
Yes.
Now, I can't choose what I'm convinced of, and this brain of mine really, really likes the scientific method and really, really likes...
No, the scientific method is amazing. The scientific method.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that
Go ahead.
we can dive into all that stuff. Like the contingency argument. We can dive into is the universe eternal and all this stuff. And at the end of it, me and MurderShed Steve might have disagreements on what or at the end of it. But
for instance, morality. I think you and I disagree on morality.
Ooh, you know what? We gotta dive into that. We do.
Justin wants to do a deep dive. Where's us? Where's us?
Morality.
But yeah, go ahead, Mo. Continue.
No. You
go. Man, I lost my trail of thoughts, but
I
would say, no, it's okay. I mean, what were you talking about before morality? What were we discussing?
So we were talking about the different things that have that on a philosophical level have been compelling to me. Not to the point of me picking up the full belief in it, but me understanding exactly where you guys are coming from and understanding how you got there.
So let me discuss, if you don't mind, let me discuss about myself a bit and how I came to Islam, and if you don't mind, let me delve into that, and from there we can basically delve into other things. That way we can maybe be a bit like consistent instead of jumping all over the
No,
place.
sure, you're good to go. We normally start with that, but you were on a roll, and I didn't want to stop you.
No, it's all
So
good, man.
we're about 28 minutes right now, so we'll have a half hour for the first show. If we can't get everything out, we still got the whole after party to go to. So
Sounds good. Sounds good.
You know what, Justin? There's a reason why they only give me like 10, 15 minutes on the show. I really muck everything up. So mute me if you need to.
It's all good, man.
nah,
It's
if
all-
I haven't muted Oz yet, I'm not going to mute you.
So yeah, like I always say, when I talk to someone, I like to compare things. So I like to compare worldviews. Okay, so Islam, for example, would be my worldview. An atheist would most likely adhere to philosophical naturalism. Okay, so since maybe we don't have much time, but when I was a kid, I was contemplating around the age of 3 or 4, maybe even 2, and I asked my parents, where did I come from? What is all this? Automatically, it's intuitive. Remember how I said intuition has the highest epistemic value based on Islamic philosophers. Okay, and so far intuition has the highest epistemic weight. No one has. Yeah, go ahead. What do you want to ask?
I just want a clarification on your definition of intuition.
So intuition would be like what's in line with our innate disposition. So we know intuitively that we are rational human beings. Okay, you don't have to prove that you are rational. This is intuition, so it's axiomatic. You cannot prove it or disprove it. You just accept it. Like, I think, therefore I am. That's intuitive. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So I think, therefore I am is intuitive. The hard problem with solipsism, you cannot solve it, but it will be coherent to accept that you exist, and it will be coherent that you accept that the real world is real. Okay, so as a child, it was intuitive that I existed. I asked my mom, she's my mom. I don't need a DNA test. I know intuitively. My dad, and so on and so forth. She's my sister. Okay, I know intuitively. I wasn't abducted. I wasn't, it will be very irrational for me to assume these things, especially as a child who hasn't been, messed up. Like, I'm not messed up. I just came out, so I'm pure. I haven't been exposed to this dimension and the lies and charming and bombastic attitude and all this stuff, that people can do. I'm still pure, so I can easily grasp these concepts. She's my mom. I accept it, point blank. Where do I live? I'm Egyptian. So, okay, I look out the balcony. There's a lot of people, animate beings, inanimate beings. I look all over to the horizon, and I see the earth is continuous, and where's the end? Is it flat? Is it round? All these questions come into play. Okay, so obviously intuition has the highest epistemic value. So now, as a Muslim, I wasn't a Muslim yet, so I asked my dad, okay, where did we all come from? Eventually, he came to the point Adam and Eve. Okay, he came to the point of Adam and Eve, and I accepted it. It made sense. And then I asked him, what about Adam and Eve and all of this? He said God, and I'm like, what about God? That's the question a 2-year-old should ask, not someone who's
What's God?
Yeah. So what about God? Who created God? He told me God has no beginning, had no end. God is eternal. So now, okay, this makes sense. And then eventually I was introduced to Islam, and then later on we also had Christians in Egypt, and that's where the comparison comes in, because I assumed everyone was a Muslim. It made sense, believing in one God. We came to be. Submission would be the state.
I thought growing up, I thought everybody on the planet believed in Jesus.
Yes, exactly. So that's what ends up happening. I assumed this, but then when I saw some guys in school who were Christians, because Egypt has both back then, even though now we have atheists as well, but nonetheless, they told us that God is a man. And my mom is like, they believe in something else. So I'm like, what is there else to believe in? God is the best explanation. But they believe that God was a man, and to me that was basically absurd and irrational and violates the laws of logic. So this is where you have to compare things now. So atheism, which is more coherent, atheism or Islam? Okay. So now when we look at atheism, basically they say, for example, just a definition that some of you might not agree with, but nonetheless, they say there is no God, for example. They negate the proposition. So there is no God. Mm-hmm. Islam says there is no God but Allah. And by the way, this has a deeper connotation, because when we say there is no God but Allah, from an Islamic lens, an atheist is actually a polytheist. Okay? Now, you might say, no, that doesn't make sense, because polytheism is not atheism. We don't believe in any gods. But nonetheless, you can submit, because Islam means submission. You can submit to the self, which is individualism, the ego, and so on and so forth. Or you can submit to the social norms. So if you live in the United States, in a Western society, I live in Canada, this means philosophical liberalism, which promotes individualism based on subjectivism. So nonetheless, you've submitted to the self or a social norms. Okay? So you have to put that into account. So you are worshiping nonetheless. Everyone worships, and everyone is spiritual nonetheless. You're not robotic. Like when you drink water, you enjoy it. When you eat food, you enjoy the steak that you're eating, because of that spiritual desire inside of you that is innate, that is causing you to experience this existence. So I don't want to guess Gallup, but I've talked to Justin about this, but atheism automatically leads to nihilism. And why is that?
Please, before we get started and before the chat goes insane, define what you mean by nihilism.
I will do that right now. So this is what I mean by nihilism before everyone fights with me. Okay, nihilism means this. Nihilism means that there are no intrinsic nor objective meaning or purpose to life. Okay, so this negates. So now this reality is nothing, because if it's nihilistic, it's nothing. Nothing matters.
So just to clarify, I can have my own subjective meanings and purposes, and I can make up my own.
No, I'm following you too. Yep.
You can be an existential.
No intrinsic, no
objective.
Yeah. Your value wasn't given to you, basically.
Yeah. So inherently, this dimension has no intrinsic value. Nothing. This physical reality. And this is why it becomes coherent under an Islamic lens to believe that in the soul. Okay? Because you take away the soul, the person is basically based on bosons and fermions producing introspective illusion. The consciousness and the free will becomes an illusion. So now if I cut someone in half, it's just a rearrangement of atoms. So it's almost like vandalizing a robot. And the question of can robot possess consciousness can come up later if we have time. But nonetheless, let me just get into this. Reality. Yeah, go ahead.
I had one question there, because you said something about your definition of nihilism, basically. And by that definition, I suppose I would be a nihilist by your definition. I don't think that there is necessarily.
This actually was value. The entailment of me and Mo's first conversation with each other. We blew the fuck up on each other. It was bad. It was probably one of the worst blow-ups that I've ever had, because I thought he meant that by nihilist that he meant no meaning at all, subjective or objective. Right. I'm like, no, fuck you. I do.
I have value in this life. Keep a motherfuckers cool. That's all I gotta say. So, sorry for the cussing. But I had a question with that. So the question was,
go ahead.
Is there something wrong with that, or is there something bad about there not necessarily being?
There is absolutely something wrong with that. Eventually, if you delve in it deeply, because a lot of atheist philosophers or agnostic philosophers, I would call Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, or Arthur Schopenhauer. Perhaps Nietzsche was more of an agnostic than an atheist, because he didn't say God is dead and that's it. No, he's trying to come up with a solution for nihilism. And he didn't make an argument that he is dead. Absolutely, he was just saying God is dead in the sense that now people are going to lose meaning and purpose, and they might even turn suicidal if it goes to the extreme limits. But nonetheless, he's trying to find a solution. And he ended up engaging from a religious discourse nonetheless, which is the Übermensch. But I don't want to delve into Nietzsche too much, because you can be an existentialist, because that's what he was. He was a postmodernist existentialist. So what does that mean? A postmodernist is someone who might even not take science as he will take science science as an ideology, so you don't have to believe in it. A postmodernist, everything is basically ideological. You do your own thing. You become promote individualism instead. In a nutshell,
Well, this is probably something you'll agree with.
Which one? What?
You don't necessarily have to believe in something for it to be true.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people believe in their own thing. It becomes subjective. But I mean, you become an existentialist, and you make your own meaning, your own purpose, and you live your own way. But is this really a profound philosophy? That's the question now. Does it provide anything to this reality? Does it correspond with this reality? Why would a nihilistic reality grant us rational faculties, metacognition, consciousness, and all these things, and make us contemplate and reflect, and make us specially aimed towards attaining truth, because we are geared to know, to want truth. We want justice. We want this. We want that. If it's fundamentally nihilistic, what's the point? And this is where God becomes a coherent explanation. Matter of fact, the best explanation we have since time immemorial is the oneness of God, and it's intuitive, it's innate to believe in one God. Matter of fact, you can ask someone, do you believe in God? Someone who's a layman, they'll tell you, yeah, I believe in God. Tell him, prove it. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how to prove it because it's innate. Prove that God is one and not two. He'll tell you, I don't know. But then you can justify using your rationality, which comes next, which is intuitive as well, based on the law of identity, the law of excluded middle, non-contradiction, causation, and so on and so forth. Yeah, go ahead.
So Mo, I'm a layman, right?
We're all laymen, bro.
Layman here.
Yeah.
So, and I've never believed in a God.
Okay, so this could be due to the fact your upbringing or something
Yes.
like this. It could be
That is correct.
upbringing.
I was not brought up to believe in a God.
Yeah, especially you live in a secular liberal society. I mean, I'm not saying that if you lived in an Islamic society or more of because Egypt is not even Islamic. Egypt is secular, just like United States or France, But nonetheless, the majority of the people are Muslim. Okay,
Right.
So it'll be easy to follow the social norms without contemplating. If someone is a layman, if someone does not contemplate, is not philosophically savvy, he'll follow the social norms. And maybe I don't know about you exactly, but maybe if someone lives in a secular liberal society, they will automatically be inclined towards the social norms and what they propagate on a social scale, and basically adhere to such notions, which would be easy. Become a psychological state more than someone who's basically operating based on epistemology and knowledge.
And the social norms here are actually Christian.
For real?
Yes. Yep. I would say when I was growing up, according to polls, I think it was like 80-something% of Americans were Christian, or at least said that they were Christian. And the narrative is pushed pretty hard on the TV and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was very familiar with a lot of, actually, I knew a lot more about the Bible than most Christians by the time I was 10. Because my parents told me to explore all these things. But I just never believed in them because honestly, I kind of found it a little silly.
Yeah, because they were not innate. They were not
Because I wasn't indoctrinated with it, basically.
Yeah, and they were not in line with your innate disposition, so it's easy for you to reject it. And that's why back to Ibn Taymiyyah, the polymath or the theologian in the Islamic dynasties, he basically said that if you give someone the concept of the Trinity, it will be easy for him to basically reject it because it's not in line with his innate disposition to believe in one God. I met Christians who are naive, matter of fact, and not all of them. I'm just saying I met some Christians who were naive.
I've met some too.
So anyways, yeah. I mean, they're nice people. Don't get me wrong. A lot of them are nice people. And I tell them, hey, prove that Jesus is God. Prove it. They have no choice but to commit a cyclical fallacy by saying, because the Bible said so. But we as Muslims, we can go outside of the book, outside of the Quran, and say God is one using the Kalam cosmological argument, the argument from contingency, the argument from cognition, consciousness, morality, dependency, you name it. Any argument, consciousness, you have no answer under atheism, philosophical naturalism. And this is why it's best to make a comparison. Which worldview is the most coherent? Islam, Christianity, Judaism, philosophical naturalism, and you make a comparison based on a basic level. You don't have to go too deep and see what's going on. So I would say, like, this reality is nothing. That's what Islam says, compared to the hereafter. Okay, so it's like kind of like Plato's cave, but not exactly. So we would say this is real. I think, therefore I am. This reality is real, but nonetheless, it can deviate you. And what's deviant about it is the things that can beguile you and charm you. And ego, for example, we would say if the atheist doesn't worship anything, he's definitely worshiping himself. He's worshiping the ego, and you have to kill the ego, you know. Yeah, man, that's the thing, you know. So don't get me wrong, it's not just the atheist who worships the ego. A lot of people worship the ego. Even some Muslims, Christians, Jews, some people have this arrogance in them built up that they cannot kill it. And there is a passage in the Quran where basically Moses tells the Israelites, as soon as they take the golden calf as a deity, because you see, ancient Egypt was the hegemony. And that's why a lot of people in this day and age, they look up to the United States. The United States is the hegemony. People want to basically imitate the United States. A lot of people want to become atheists. Look at Saudi Arabia. There's atheists in Saudi Arabia. They want to, because of Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and all these people who are basically misrepresenting academia, but nonetheless, they are basically, they're the hegemony, they're an academic elite. They can beguile people. So what ends up happening, people want to imitate them blindly without reflection. And that's what Moses told the Israelites. Do not imitate the Egyptians. Do not build the golden calf with the Egyptian gold that you stole, that basically was a burden on you. And you wanted to basically, you couldn't resist, so you had to melt it. This is the metaphor behind the concept. So they built the golden calf and they worshipped it. And Moses came to them and told them to kill their ego. So God can, so they can be close to God. Because you see, when you're in a squabble with someone and the ego clashes, you will never ascertain knowledge. You'll never be able to pierce through and be able to see what is the crux of the matter here, so we can solve the problem. Because there's an ego clash. So when you kill the ego, it's not about you. It's not about me, bro. It's about knowledge and truth. What we want to achieve. What we want to achieve. Do you know what I'm saying? Is this true? Is submission true? Do you pick the red pill? Do you pick the blue pill? You know what I'm saying? Like the Matrix? Because I get this analogy on my...
I take all kinds of pills, but, you know.
Yeah, me too, bro. But, yeah.
Doesn't stop the MurderShed from opening up.
I got to keep my blood pressure down, you know?
Yeah. I mean...
This MurderShed lifestyle is kind of stressful.
I believe you, man. Yeah, probably is. Yeah, that's why sometimes you need time alone. But nonetheless, like you only have two choices, to be honest with you. We're on this planet and we're bounded by the physical. We have, as they say, sky's the limit. Or you can even, I mean, how far are you gonna go? To be honest with you, and you're only limited by choice. You're limited human being. Everything is limited. That's why if you look at the Kalam, the universe had to have a beginning, because an actual infinite is impossible. You know, a potential infinite maybe, but not an actual. But nonetheless, we're bounded. So this entails submission. You either submit to your own desires and pick the wrong choices, or submit to the one who has caused it all to be. And that's what Islam entails. And in the Quran it says, a person who basically leans away from the faith of Abraham, who is the upright, and a Muslim, which means submission, a submitter, one who submits to God. That's what a Muslim is. Abraham wasn't a Jew nor a Christian. He was Babylonian. He wasn't an Arab nor a Hebrew. He was just Babylonian, and he basically submitted to God. And whoever leans away from that faith of Abraham has debased himself in folly, because then you'll have consequence. You'll have things like liberalism, naturalism, absurdism, nihilism, and all these philosophies that are basically, in my opinion, are absurd in of themselves. It's just foolishness, you know. So Abraham, the faith of Abraham makes the most sense to me, and to all humanity innately. You know, I would say contemplate on that. Check out, know who Abraham was, and you'll know what Islam is, to be honest with you. Because Quran refused the Jews when they said that he was a Jew, he was a Christian, he was this and that. But Abraham was Babylonian, just like the angels. If you believe in angels or you believe in Adam, the first man had to submit. He had no choice but to submit to God. Everything submits in reality based on law and order, basically, laws of physics, which requires a legislator, someone who can legislate and you know, a ruler, basically a king or a god, and then we, agents with free will, we submit. We have no choice but to submit.
There's a topic here.
It's
Free
a bit of
will.
preaching, but it has some philosophy in it.
So what if you were to run across an atheist
Yes.
who was pretty much without an ego, like Justin up here?
Yeah, Justin.
He's pretty much he doesn't
He's
really
cool.
have an ego getting in the way.
Yeah.
Would you call him like a soon-to-be Muslim?
That's what a lot of them are saying.
Okay, so it depends, you know, because you see, we have. I'll give you an analogy, okay? Because I can't really speak. I can't judge Justin. Only God can judge him at the end of the day. But we can judge based on the apparent as well as Muslims. We judge based on the apparent, based on what's in front of us. But only God knows what's inside of him. Okay, so we have, for example, between Jesus and Muhammad, there was a time, and that time would be called the interval period, where there was no revelation and prophet. And obviously, we believe that the gospel of Jesus himself was altered and was basically corrupted, if you want to say that. It's not authentic. We don't have a gospel in Aramaic or Hebrew. You know, we have it in maybe the Greek language. But nonetheless, between that time frame, if someone was to follow his innate disposition, believe in one God and his moral compass as well, because we believe in a moral compass that God has embedded in us, so we can distinguish between evil and good. You know, if these people operated based on that, then they would be considered Ahl al-Fatra, the people of that period. So they're basically they're forgiven. You know, God will. They won't be held accountable because there was no revelation, no prophet. Now, for example, if Islam wasn't sent to you, okay, if Islam wasn't sent to you as a human being and you didn't know anything about it, you were ignorant about it, you won't be held accountable like someone who rejected it arrogantly and knew it was the truth and understood it rationally as well. You know, but if you reject it based on it was distorted, it came to you like for example, the Fox News or whatever, you know, any type of news that distorts Islam or anything like that. If it came to you distorted, then you're pardoned. You know, you won't be held accountable.
So here's the thing: why don't you and the rest of the Muslims that I love talking to just leave me alone and let me be ignorant? I get the free pass.
It's best to have knowledge, you know, because Al-Ghazali says, what is the alchemy of happiness? The alchemy of happiness is beneficial, right knowledge, you know, because that's what happiness is. Because look at this reality. For example, this is what Al-Ghazali says: the best cloth, the best form of cloth is silk, and it comes from the vomit of the caterpillar, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think that depends on what you're using the cloth for. To be fair.
Silk.
To be fair.
So and then he'll say the best type of food is honey, and it's excreted from the bee. You know, so someone is playing games with us, and the smell of the musk is from the deer. Okay, from the backside of the deer. It comes from like a gland from the deer. And this is the best type of musk, the best type of cloth is silk, and the best type of food is honey. And all of these things, they come from either a vomit or someone excreting, and so on and so forth. Someone is playing games with us. And then the best of pleasures is when the two, what do you call it? Like the two sexual organs meet.
Something vomits, but it's not me.
So, you know what I'm saying? So, this reality is a bit of like it's a kind of absurd in a way, you know. If you look at it from that lens, someone is playing games with us. At the end of the day, like, why do we value all these things like silk, honey, and all these things, and all of a sudden, and we assume that attaining all this would make us happy, but actually, what would make us really happy is beneficial knowledge and the right knowledge, you know, based on right action and beneficial action. And that's why we are giving you this knowledge, so you can basically have a good life. You know what I'm saying?
I'm on the same page with you on that for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, man.
Attaining truth, attaining knowledge, and
And
trying to make the best world for everybody.
No,
yes, yes.
I don't want to say in Mo. I know you probably haven't been meaning to, but sitting back listening, there has been a few times where you have generalized atheist this and as in it's the whole. I know that's not what you mean.
Yes, yes.
I just wanted to make that clear because I was about to do that myself,
Okay.
and say that Christians, they just don't argue the same as the Muslims do. And that's just there's two generalizations. Some Christians, a lot of them that I've come across, do not come. They come at me saying, "Okay, you're an atheist. You don't believe in God.
Yeah.
And since you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you know that the Bible is true, that God is real, and that Jesus came down and sacrificed himself for your sinful ass to be able to go to heaven with him. And you know what? You'll burn in hell if you don't believe this."
Yeah.
So you should probably believe, and that's a lot of what I've come across when it comes to Christians talking to me. When I got with these Muslims that I talk to, they say, "So we both agree that the universe exists, right?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, sure. We're already at common ground." And then they're like, "So do you think the universe is eternal?" And I'm like, "Well, it could be. I mean, we got inflation theory, we got stuff like that." They're like, "Have you ever heard of Thomson's lamp paradox?" And I'm like, let me look into that. So I look into it, and I realize that if the universe is eternal, that there would be an infinite amount of causes and effects prior to this moment here. If there's an infinite amount of causes and effects, how could we have ever gotten to this point right now?
Yeah. So this is basically the Kalam cosmological argument.
That's part,
Yeah, by Al-Ghazali, because Al-Ghazali was the first one to fully articulate it, and it says that everything that began to exist has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. And he also provides a syllogism, if I'm not mistaken, for negating the actual infinite. I mean, the actual infinite. Yeah. So he says an actual infinite cannot exist. An infinite temporal regress of events is an actual infinite.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, an infinite temporal regress of events cannot exist. So he's basically saying that you cannot have infinite amount of events and causations. Okay, and basically what he's saying is this: like, we're limited human beings. Okay, so if you keep cutting me and dividing me into pieces, you'll eventually reach nothing. Okay, because this is based on natural. If you look at it from a methodological, naturalistic point of view, you'll eventually reach nothing, and that's why under atheism, nihilism also becomes the fact of the matter, fundamentally nothing. So if you keep doing that, an actual infinite, you cannot reach infinite if you keep cutting me in half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same with the universe; it's a limited reality. Okay, if it's limited. And if you keep trying going backwards, you will not be able to basically reach the infinite, because you cannot traverse the infinite.
If also, you start with 10 and you take half of 10 away from itself, you get 5. If you take half of 5 away from itself, you get 2.5. If you keep doing that to each number, you'll see where you'll start to get into exponents, and you will never ever actually reach 0.
Yeah, that will be the potential infinite now.
Mm-hmm.
Not
yes,
the actual infinite.
I learned that today.
The potential infinite is what Al-Ghazali believes in. He says a potential infinite because he was a mathematician and a logician and a philosopher and a polymath as well. So the man was a genius, pretty much. So what he said is that potential infinite is acceptable. You can believe in a potential infinite. It's ideal. It corresponds with our metaphysics and whatnot, but an actual infinite in this physical dimension is impossible because of the example that I gave you. And the Hilbert Hotel is a good analogy. If you know the Hilbert Hotel, is basically you have a hotel with infinite rooms that are occupied. Okay, you have occupied rooms, and then you have an infinite of guests coming in, so they can occupy the infinite hotel. which is fully occupied. So you'll end up running into a paradox where it says no vacancy, guests are welcome. You know what I'm saying? Because what the manager could do, he can move ad infinitum the infinite guests on even numbers. So then guest number 1 will be in room 2, guest number 2 will be in room 4, and so on and so forth. So then you'll have odd numbers that are vacant, and then infinite guests can come and occupy these rooms, and so on and so forth, and you can keep cramming infinite amount of guests in this infinite rooms of the hotel. You know what I mean? So this, we can conceptualize this concept, and the fact that we can conceptualize it, it shows that we can come to a conclusion that it's absurd. So it means that it's impossible, and that's the beauty about our metaphysics that I would say God has given us. So we can come to a conclusion and say, you know what, this is incoherent or absurd. Let's not accept it. A potential infinite is okay, but an actual infinite does not make sense.
So I want to get a couple questions from MurderShed in here, and then we're already at the first hour. I know it probably went super fast.
Yeah,
we're already past the first hour, so we'll get a couple questions from MurderShed Steven, and then we'll take a short break, and then we can go into the after party. We'll get some more people in here, and we'll pick this right back up.
Sure. I was going to ask about, because that sounded a lot like maybe a ark that holds all the animals.
Yeah. I mean, listen, from understanding,
like all those people in that hotel room. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You talk about Noah's ark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean,
I had to just poke a little bit. That's all.
No, it's okay, man. Listen, I honestly, some Muslims believe in a local flood. Some Muslims believe in a global flood. I like to believe in a global flood, even though there are no evidence. But again, you got to understand, science is based on induction, so it's only a pixel, not the whole picture. And also, in terms of how many animals hopped on the ark, Islam doesn't provide us with these type of answers, because it's irrelevant. Because the crux of that story, by the way, from an Islamic lens, is based on metaphysics, not physics, not like something that is physical. Because Noah, for example, his son abandoned him. His son didn't want, from an Islamic lens, he didn't want to hop on the ark. And Noah told him, and Noah, when he was talking to God, for example, God told him, your family and those who believe, and also the animals will go on the ship. Eventually, his son is also family, but he abandoned Noah. So when the flood came and Noah told his son, come with us, his son said, no, I'll go to a mountain, and the mountain will rescue me, because he did not believe in the sign of God, and the sign is the ark. So he should go to the ark because that's a sign. But he said, no, the mountain looks more of a safe haven than like the boat. But he ended up drowning nonetheless. Now, when Noah talked to God, he said, you promised me my family will come on the boat with us. That's what God promised. He said, your family. God told him he's not family. Why? Because you have to distinguish between a bloodline and a spiritual line. On a metaphysical scale, family means those who believe in the same thing as you. Not blood. We don't care about blood. We're not that shallow. We like to work on a more profound level. Family are those who will go to heaven. You can be my family and you're white and I'm brown eventually, on a metaphysical scale. It's not based on blood. So that's why God told him your son is not family. And
I see what you're saying there for sure.
So it's on a spiritual scale.
I get that.
Okay.
I get that.
That's why.
Yeah, I'm ready for. I'm ready for any of those questions.
Yeah, sorry, just to say that's why there's no racism in Islam, by the way. And we treat people equally, even if they don't believe in the same thing. That's fine, but they're still human beings. You know what I mean? We don't. There's no compulsion in faith. There's no superimpose.
So you would be clearly against, any Muslim extremist groups that are trying to just hack people up and blow people up because they're atheists or Christians or whatever.
I mean, even when we go, it was prescribed on us to go to war. Okay, so war is not something pleasant, but it's commanded that if we have to, we must. and we have rules. We're not supposed to burn a tree. We're not supposed to kill innocent people, women and kids, and none of that stuff, or even cattle and animals. None of that. Obviously, with today's technology, someone can throw a bomb and cause havoc. We're not even allowed to use this type of things because it will cause havoc. It will cause mischief and corruption on the land. It won't just kill the target. It will basically, cause a massive destruction. And this is, from an Islamic lens, this is like mischief and corruption. You know what I'm saying?
I would denounce, just like you did, I would denounce the Chinamen over there, the atheists in China that are just killing people for being religious and Christian. I denounce that shit all day. And so my question is, why is it so easy for us to be denouncing all these groups that we are not a part of, but President Trump can't do it with his old, Proud Boys? I find it weird. Mo, did you see the debate the other night?
I watched it. Yeah.
So there was a point in time where the moderator was like, "Hey, President, can you denounce white nationalists and
Well, what do you want me to call them? I don't even know. What are white nationalists? I've never heard of this before. Oh, the KKK? I don't know what you mean. It's fantastic.
It's like,
everybody's okay.
Sure, I'll do
it. Stand by. Just wait, okay? It's fine."
He basically told his Proud Boys, is what I think he called him. He said, stand back and stand by. Being prior military myself, stand by means wait for further instruction.
Yep.
Which means that he's in some type of leadership position within the KKK or whatever he wants to call his white, racist haters. So,
yeah.
I mean, it was super easy for us to say, hey, this is a group of people that are similar to us, but they're not fucking us at all. And it was super easy to say, no, we're not part of that. I don't condone that. Fuck all of that shit. It was super easy for us to do that. I'm like, man, that's the
But I suppose this is a good example of why we should be more vocal and be more adamant about doing something about those groups, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now they're in a position of power, and that's scary.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know, Mo, that both Eunice and Hazem showed up to support you in the chat.
Oh, nice, man. Thank you, guys. Yeah, thanks, Eunice.
But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up the first portion. Thank you, Steve, for coming on and co-hosting with me. Thank you, Mo, for coming in last minute and giving us some philosophical jargon that I'm still bouncing around in my head. But yeah, we'll take a short intermission. We'll come back for the after party. Anybody in the chat, first off, thank you guys for hanging out and having a conversation with us. If you would like to get in on the after party, please send me a message, or send MurderShed Steve a message. Mo, if you got any buddies that want to jump on, you can send them the same StreamYard link that I sent you, and they can get into the same room. If we get, if we get more than 6 people in, we'll have to divvy people in and out. I'd kind of like to try and keep a 3 believer, 3 non-believer system going, and we'll go from there. But yeah, with that being said, if this is also your first time on the channel, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Get some more content. We just did a interview with an after party with Matt Dillahunty, which was really, really cool. It was awesome. So take a look at that if you haven't already. But with that being said, I will see you guys in the after party. Stay home and stay safe.